Let's talk to former MEP Ben Habib. Hello, Ben.
Good afternoon, Kevin.
Well, you've seen the story of Graham King. It's extraordinary. Over 1 year, his company made £1.3 billion from the Home Office, providing accommodation for asylum seekers. He's got hotels all over the country. He's going into the disused airbase business now, and holiday camps. He's going to set up big centres for them to go. So he's doing very, very nicely. Thank you. He's not the only person making a lot of money out of this. There's a company called Serco that makes a fortune. So lots of people are making lots of money out of the Home Office to accommodate migrants. But the most poignant fact in this extraordinary story, the story of Graham King, used to run a caravan park. Now he's on course to be a billionaire with taxpayers' money. Not his fault, the government's fault. But the most poignant fact is this, Ben. The contract he has with the Home Office runs until 2029. Nearly the end of the decade, 6 more years. The government knows it has no chance of stopping the boats. When Rishi Sunak made that speech saying, "I will stop the boats," the subtext was a load of civil servants down at the Home Office, and probably a lot of politicians too, saying, "Oh, no, you won't. You don't stand a chance." That's the truth of it, isn't it?
Well, it is. It's a staggering. Just going back to that figure, first of all, 1.3 billion. It's an utterly staggering figure. That's about a third of what was spent on all migrants last year, which came out of the foreign aid development budget, and which in itself represented about 40% of the aid budget, which would ordinarily have gone abroad to help people who were deserving, one would hope. But instead, it's being spent on hotels, caravan parks, and now, the conversion of RAF bases to accommodate these people. It is an absolutely staggering amount of money. And of course, if we're going to spend that kind of money on housing, feeding, medically caring for these people who come to the United Kingdom, they're going to keep coming. There is no way we're going to deter them by spending literally, as we do, 10 times as much as the French do, on looking after them. So when Rishi Sunak, as you rightly say, Kevin, gets on a pedestal and he says we're going to stop the boats by creating a sort of deterrence in the United Kingdom, he is telling Porkies, where there's no deterrent. You come to the UK, you're looked after in relative 5-star service, you're given these fantastic accommodation, vested interest now will actually work dramatically, as this chap I'm sure does, Mr. King, to protect your interest because he's making money out of it, and so the show goes on. And we've seen this repeatedly, haven't we, with government policy? We saw it with lockdowns, with test and trace. We saw it with the all the COVID tests that you had to do before you traveled, all the PPE equipment that was needed for the protection of NHS staff. We're seeing it, I'm sure we're seeing it and experiencing it in Ukraine with the arms trade. Whenever there's adversity and the government embarks on a big program of spending, vested interests get embedded. And once they're embedded, they promote the problem because they're making money out of it. And so we're seeing this again with the illegal migration.
Yeah. And, the migrant crisis for people like Graham King, I don't blame him. He's clearly a good businessman. But the migrant crisis for Graham King and a lot of other entrepreneurs is a business opportunity. They're making a fortune out of this. Now, meanwhile, there's a disused prison down near the south coast in Bexhill, near Bexhill in Sussex, called North Eye. Now, this derelict former military prison was owned by a consortium from the United Arab Emirates, the UEA. About not so long ago, they sold this heap of crumbling buildings to a group of businessmen here in Britain for £6 million. That group of businessmen, venture capitalists, I think they are, have just sold this pile of bricks to the Home Office, again,
at a killing price.
For £15 million. And I happen to know, because I know the campaigners down there, to get this ready to take migrants, it will cost the government another £20 million worth of renovation. And then they'll put 1,200 migrants into a place that is right next to a little village that really doesn't deserve this. They've never been consulted. The local people never been consulted about this. What the hell is going on, Ben?
I mean, it's dystopian, isn't it? And you have a Chancellor of the Exchequer who says that he's not going to cut our taxes for fear of inflation, and yet they are here dipping their hands into our back pockets and blowing cash left, right and centre on issues which are absolutely diametrically opposed to the interests of the British people. It's extraordinary. The notion that the government is a better guardian of our money and is less inflationary in the way that it spends it is fundamentally flawed and laid bare just by the statistics you have put out, Kevin. Of course, there are millions of examples like that. The government is a poor guardian of people's money, and it's embedding this problem with illegal migration. It's not getting a grip of it. There's only one solution to border control, and that is to control your borders. It sounds...
yeah, I hadn't thought of that.
It's tautological, but it makes sense. You know, get border force to actually push the boats back. And before all the bleeding heart open border liberals claim that that would result in massive death in the sea, it wouldn't. Belgium has a real problem with boat launches. It intercepts these boats at sea, unlike the French, and sends 90% of boats successfully back to its shores. Dinghies, just like the ones that are seeking to enter British territorial water. It's simply that we don't have the political will or courage in our government, and indeed the services that support the government, to do what is right for the United Kingdom, which is to enforce our borders. Any other country, and in any other period in history, anyone trying to enter your country illegally would have been dealt with in the most severe manner. Yeah. And we've just allowed ourselves to be hijacked by a false narrative that these people are genuine refugees, which they're not because they're coming from France, and that we must welcome them with open arms. It's completely gone mad.
Yeah, and we have a government now that seems to me is just chasing headlines. You know, Robert Jenrick, the immigration minister, announced, was it a couple of days ago now, that 50 of the most expensive country hotels that are full of migrants will be emptied of these migrants, and the migrants will be put into cheaper hotels. I mean, big deal. Meanwhile, down in Dorset, the Bibby Stockholm barge, that rusting hulk, that symbol of the migrant crisis fiasco, able to house, I think, nearly 500 young male migrants. As I can see it, so far has 21 migrants on board, and this is following this absolute farce that has been trundling on since the beginning of August, when they planned to put 500 on, got 39 on, had to be taken off because some of them were scared of water, then Legionnaire's disease, then the Fire Brigade Union said it was a fire risk. They've finally got it ready to be housed and boarded upon, and there's 21 people on board. The whole migrant crisis in terms of this government it's a laughable joke, isn't it?
I mean, the Bibby Stockholm, as you rightly say, embodies, if you like, the utter failure of government to get to grips with this problem. But, you know, when the government, just going back slightly to what I've said before, but when the government talks about deterrence, what sort of deterrence is it sending out to people smugglers and those who would enter the United Kingdom illegally when we can't even get a barge to operate properly, when our signature deportation program is stuck in the mud, when we pass new act of parliament after new act of parliament promising that this will now resolve the problem, but it does absolutely nothing. The Illegal Migration Act, which was the latest tilt at trying to use legislation to sort out this problem, was put into force in July. Well, we're in October now, and we still haven't got a result. We were told by the Home Secretary that the Illegal Migration Act would remove the ability of the ECHR to interfere in our programs. Yet the Rwanda plan, which, by the way, I don't think would work even if it was working, it wouldn't work as a deterrent even if it was working at full tilt. But the Rwanda plan, which at vast cost, 140 million upfront to the Rwandan government, is still sitting in the judicial process in the United Kingdom. So clearly the Illegal Migration Act didn't do what it was meant to do on the tin. Yeah. People looking at the United Kingdom would just be laughing. There's no deterrent.
I know. The deterrent now, Ben, is to the migrants. It's, aha, you thought you were going into a flashy, stately home country hotel. Well, you're not. You're only going to get the Premier Inn. I mean, it's pathetic, isn't it? Ben, we will talk about this very soon again, I am absolutely sure.